I started to realize, this is kind of helping me with some other kind of deeper issues going on in
Mhm.
terms of anxiety, because where does anxiety exist? It exists
Mhm.
in your brain, where you
Mhm.
go sort of deep into yourself and start worrying. And
Mhm.
improv pushes the opposite thing. So it's like pushing you out.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that that's what it was doing, of course, at first, especially when I was little. I had no
Yeah.
idea that it was helping me. But as I've grown into understanding it and, as an adult, I started to realize, oh, this is this makes a lot of sense.
There's so much advice out there about meditation and how it improves your brain and it improves your mood, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So this seems like something almost like a different form of meditation. It's a social
Yeah.
meditation. You're in the
Yeah.
present moment, right?
Do you remember what it feels like to be comfortable in your own skin? Not just confident, but also pain-free, relaxed, healthy, and carefree? Think about the most robust version of your own childhood body. This is what lifeyness feels like: a joyful spirit and a vibrant physical state of being. I'm your guide, Professor Sarah, storyteller, teacher, and wellness enthusiast. Reach into the vitality of your own girlhood to supercharge your grown-up life. So when I was beginning my career as a professor and my kids were really young, my good friend Jessie asked me to do something that terrified me. She invited me to her very first improv class that she was teaching. At the time, it was a big ask because I was happy to just like grow into a reclusive bookworm. Um, and participating in an improv class was like my worst nightmare. At the time, I had like mounting anxiety about having to be at the front of a classroom day in and day out. I wasn't managing it well. It was just a lot of stage fright. I just wanted to hide behind the podium half the time. But because I went to this class, I believe it changed the course of my professional life for sure. Definitely my personal life and big and small ways. Because of this class, I made lots of friends. My friendship with Jessie deepened, and eventually, I could have never imagined I would do this, but eventually, I even like joined their troupe, and we did performances at the local comedy club on a weekly basis. So I have since quit my improv career. The things that I learned in that class and with those people have stuck with me. But I want to go back in time a little bit, a couple decades before that, and just tell you how I met Jessie. Or at least this is how I remember it. I don't know if I was like 5 or 6 years old, but I was really young. I was riding my bike all by myself around the block in Tallahassee, Florida, where I grew up. And I saw some kids my age, like they were playing outside in the front yard at a house down the street. And my family had just moved to town like the year before. So even though I was like really young, I still had this sense that I didn't belong yet. And I was very shy. So I rode past that house many times, like around the block again and again. I really wanted to play with the kids, but instead of stopping and asking if I could play, I waited until someone spoke to me first. And that someone was, of course, Jessie. If you've listened to my episode about friendship, I mentioned her. But anyway, she included me. She reached out and asked me to come play with them, even though she already had plenty of friends to play with, at least from my vantage point. But, 30 years later, here we are. We're still best friends. I'm going to be interviewing her today. And we have kids of our own who are practically cousins. And even though this episode is not about friendship, I think friendship can play an important role in coping with anxiety. But I want to focus on Jessie's story. how she has used the art of improv to improve her quality of life and kind of break through some of these barriers, because there's a lot she would have never done had she allowed anxiety to kind of control the trajectory of her life. So since 2007, Jessie's been building this amazing organization called the Improv Effect. She's basically taken her life's philosophy and practice and incorporated play and curiosity into all aspects of navigating the challenges of life and the joys of life. And she's become like a key player in some really big companies around the world. I won't name drop right now, but you can check her out at theimproveffect.com. She also has 2 books that she has co-authored. And before starting her own company, she trained in theater. She worked for Disney. She worked for Sesame Street. And all the things she does with her company incorporate improv, but she does, team building, teamwork, creative problem solving, onboarding, presentation skills, coaching, all kinds of things. But I think at its heart, her company and her leadership just inspire creativity and like connection. She brings people together in a way that I've never seen anybody else do. So, and that really, of course, resonates with me. From the very beginning, she was the one who invited me to play. She was the one who offered an invitation to play. So, thanks for listening to my interview today with Jessie Shternshus of the Improv Effect.
So thank you for joining me. Give me like a 60-second overview of what improv is to you and then talk about how it works into your work life.
Okay. Yeah. So when I think of the art of improv, I think about what we do every day. So I really think that improv is life, or even lifeyness.
It is
Actually,
lifeyness. It's totally lifeyness.
it is lifeyness. And so I think it is part of what we live and breathe. It's the way that we interact with each other unscripted. It's an awareness of the world around us. It is reacting to what's needed from moment to moment. And it is a set of tools on how to be able to do that better. So it is, how to collaborate with one another in conversation, how to collaborate with your environment, how to make a conversation feel inclusive. And I think that's the art of improv. And it can also be funny, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I think that's what I always liked about it, that what I learned about it when I started doing it is that it's not about being funny.
Yeah. I think it often gets mixed up with like stand-up and things like that. So people automatically go to the comedy aspect of it, but just a practice of being present and being aware of each other in a space and how you play off of one another. And that can be playful, but it can also be really deep and spiritual. It could be anything, really. It's just what the moment calls for.
Yeah. That's one of the things we were talking about earlier, was like I think you said something like it just allows you to be fully present. Like, how does improv allow you to be fully present for those who have never done improv before?
Yeah, so it teaches you ways to get your brain sort of to go from having an inner agenda. So like when oftentimes we're in our brain thinking about what we are supposed to do next, or what we want to say next, right? Or what is scripted, oh, what was I supposed to do? What comes next? and improv teaches us how to just be in the moment and learn how to be aware, like have an outside awareness of what's going on. And so in a sense, we leave our brains of that inner dialogue, and we create a sense of what's going on outside, right? And that's kind of where, I started to realize, this is kind of helping me with some other kind of deeper issues going on in terms of anxiety, because where does anxiety exist? It exists in your brain, where you go sort of deep into yourself and start worrying. And improv pushes the opposite thing. So it's like pushing you out.
Yeah.
I didn't know that that's what it was doing, of course, at first, especially when I was little. I had no idea that it was helping me. But as I've grown into understanding it, and, as an adult, I started to realize, oh, this makes a lot of sense,
Yeah. And it's almost like, when I think about it, it's almost like the opposite of self-consciousness, like meaning this being self-conscious about appearance, right? Like the opposite of what's happening on social media and looking at all, the things on a very like surface level. And it's awareness. Like, so there's outside, like almost like looking at your body from the outside, looking in can feel so disembodying, but like improv is like the opposite of that. It's like you get into your body, you become aware of yourself from the inside out, and of the dynamics around you. So you're like right there.
Yeah. And
like present.
then you're present, and you're just sort of embracing it for what it is. So you learn how to move in your body, but you also learn how to, if you will, step into other body language and things like that, right? So like if somebody calls out a character, you learn how to take on something else, right? So all of a sudden you are stepping into some other person's shoes. If an audience member or somebody asks you to be something that you're not, you're stepping into the shoes of somebody else. So you quickly learn the idea of empathy, right? What is it like to feel like this other person? And how can you have empathy for them, take on that embodiment, and interact in the world? So it's yet teaching another really important skill about inclusiveness. And so it's just got all these really beautiful teachings that, again, come out of something that when you're little, you don't really realize what's going on, but it is really why I love, facilitating and teaching it to so many people, because I do feel like it has just such amazing philosophies and teachings that are so important for the way we connect with one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of being little, can you share your first memory of, or maybe not your first memory, but like give me a history of your own kind of struggle with anxiety?
Yeah. So I think the things I can remember are just kind of struggling, probably earliest memories are probably the middle school years. And I had found improv like pre-teen. But I remember, really struggling with anxiety, and I come by it naturally and honestly.
Come by it honestly.
Yeah. It was just waiting for me to smack me in the face. Yeah, and I was really struggling with panic attacks, worrying about, big events that were coming up. I think hormonal changes, things like that, were just giving me a whole lot of anxiety, to the point of where it was hard for me to even think about going to school and things like that. Like,
I remember that.
Yeah. And I even missed, like, I think a week and a half of school at one point.
Yeah.
Because of having such severe anxiety and panic back in middle school. And so I was so in my head, like you typically are, and worrying and just getting worse and worse and worse. But I I know that, for my whole life, whenever I would have like an improv class, that was like my light at the end of the tunnel each week. That would be the thing I'd
Mm,
look forward to because, when you're there and you're in this class with these people and you're interacting and you're just having so much fun,
mm-hmm.
I didn't have time to be in my head because I
Yeah.
had to react to what was going on. And so it would give me this space where, all of a sudden I would forget about whatever was bothering me.
Right.
And so at that time I still had those classes at least once a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was kind of like saving me, but I didn't realize it then, but
That's
I
such a
just knew I had
gift.
to be there. Exactly. It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew I had to go, but I don't know how that I had made the connection yet,
Mm-hmm.
what a big effect it was having on me. I
Yeah. Like I remember
totally.
not understanding what was going on, like why you weren't going to school and
Mm-hmm.
like it it being a complete mystery. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I think she has a stomach ache. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
I
big
definitely had a stomach ache,
a
a big
big
one. Yeah.
body-sized stomach
Yeah.
ache.
Yeah, it was a huge stomach ache for sure. Um, yeah. I mean, I didn't really understand what was going on fully, I don't think. I mean, I definitely knew it was anxiety, but I did not know what to do. It was not fun.
What did it feel like?
So it's interesting how you have like this crazy creative dialogue in your head about like doomsday, just like everything's going to go wrong, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like going and going and going crazy, crazy, crazy. But also your body like physically responds to anxiety too. And you become very, or at least I do, become very warm. It's like your
Mm-hmm.
whole body changes temperature too.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel physically ill,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel sick. And so
Yeah.
it feels like you're getting the flu. It's so crazy how
Yeah.
our bodies respond to mental illness, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in a way that feels like an actual like sickness, cold, like it's crazy.
There's a threat. Like
Yeah.
for some reason, yeah,
Yeah.
our bodies respond as if there's a physical threat,
Yeah.
which is it's
Yeah.
like this glitch, it's
Yeah.
like there is nothing, but there is,
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I talked
It's
to
nuts.
when I talked to Becca, the dancer, the dance
Mm-hmm.
professor, she said it
Mm-hmm.
was a absolute terror. Like
Mm-hmm.
she was like, this isn't depression or sadness or like a little nervousness. She's like, I felt terror when
Mm-hmm.
she would feel it. And so it's interesting how it's felt differently, but it's this manifestation physically.
Um,
Yeah.
Improv really helps you get out of your head.
Yeah.
And it I think what I found is that you need something, or at least I do, you need something that stops that like spiral thinking in
Yeah.
its tracks, like a distraction,
An interruption.
an interruption of the
Yeah.
like spiral. And improv for me is that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it will not allow you to go there because you can't be that agenda can't be turned on because you have to focus outward on other people.
Mm-hmm.
You have to focus on what others need. And
Mm-hmm.
anxiety is focused inward
Mm-hmm.
on the you, not the them.
Yeah.
And so if you're focused on the them, you can't be like selfish, not in a bad way. You just can't be,
Self-absorbed. Yeah.
yeah, self-absorbed. In anxiety, you have to be focused on others. And
Mm-hmm.
so it just stops it in its tracks. And
Mm-hmm.
then that is a lot of times all you need
Mm-hmm.
um to stop that pattern.
Yeah.
And once I stop the pattern, I'm fine because I love being around people.
Mm-hmm.
And and then as soon as I get out of that, I'm like having a great
Mm-hmm.
time, and I'm good. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
it's like it never happened. It's crazy.
Right.
you know
Yeah. It's
so
like as long as you're playing,
yeah, I'm fine,
you're fine. Yeah.
which is so weird.
Never stop playing.
Never stop playing, and then you'll be fine. That's my advice. Never stop playing.
That's interesting because like there's so much advice out there about meditation and how it improves your brain and it improves your mood and all this stuff, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So this seems like something, it's almost like a different form of meditation. It's a social
Yeah.
meditation. You're in the
Yeah,
present moment, right?
exactly. Because for me, I've never been able to meditate because quieting my brain is not necessarily a great thing in terms of like classic,
Yeah.
meditation, because that, at least the times I've tried, I can't get to that point, and that really does make me sink into my own head and anxiety. Like doing that is not
Mm-hmm.
great for me.
Right.
So what I need to focus outward on others, and that is
Mm-hmm.
very, very helpful, and that really does bring me to a flow state.
Mm-hmm.
And or creating a song or something that
Mm-hmm.
is producing something outside of myself,
Mm-hmm.
is so much better than just like focusing on breath. That does not do anything for me
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Yeah.
Like, because I can't quiet the voice,
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I
We
don't
need to
know.
create a song or sing a
Yeah,
song, right?
right now, like,
If only I had the skills to like hook that up. That'd be
I
awesome.
know.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah, it is.
Um, so even though like you don't necessarily meditate, that doesn't work for you. You have
Nope.
told me before about how you have this thing, speaking of tips and tricks, like
Mm.
a a slow walk to nowhere. Like you've talked
Mm-hmm.
about that before.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to incorporate like, kind of the curiosity
Mm-hmm.
side of your practice and your philosophy. Tell me about a slow walk to nowhere.
I will. So the idea is, it kind of came from, when you're like in a new place that you've never been, and like you go on vacation or you're traveling somewhere and you pull over the side of the road, and all of a sudden you like, you see the trees differently, and you see the weeds and the flowers differently.
Mm-hmm.
Or you hear birds differently, even though you may have the same birds in your yard and the same oak tree in your yard.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, you just see things differently. And I
Right.
feel like it's because you are slowing down and noticing things in a different way, just
Mm-hmm.
because you have, changed your environment, right? And
Mm-hmm.
by changing your environment, you have changed your perspective, and in a sense you're slowing down. So the idea of a slow walk to nowhere is, can you do that in your space every day? Like,
Mm-hmm.
can you say, today I'm going to go walk outside and take a slow walk to nowhere? So kind of, slow down, see things from a different perspective. And what can you notice? Like the beauty in,
Mm-hmm.
a spider web with dew on it, or,
Mm-hmm.
can you smell the fig tree outside? What does it smell like? What are the
Yeah.
things that you're just passing by way too fast? And
Yeah.
how can you, take the time to notice them the way you would if maybe you were on vacation or something else? And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think that, it's a playfulness, but it's also, kind of meditative, or if you will, but it's a way to kind of center yourself and, be grateful too for the
Mm-hmm.
things around you that you might not be taking the time to take in. But
Mm-hmm.
I find that to be really, really helpful,
Yeah.
and appreciate your life kind of more. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. And that probably reduces anxiety. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's it's almost a form of meditation in a way. Like I
Mm,
like that. I prefer. I try to
mm,
meditate, but walking
mm-hmm.
meditations are
Mm.
much easier because then you're moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. See, I think I could get into that more.
Mm-hmm.
Just standing completely still and focusing on my breath hasn't really worked for me.
I want to talk a little bit about like either your clients or like former students. What's so cool is that you've been doing this for like more than 15 years, and that when you started out, I mean, I was terrified to come to your
Mm.
class. It was kind of like one of these situations where it was like, you were like, your job as my best friend is
Yeah,
to come to my
you
first
have to
improv.
come. I know,
You have
please.
you have to come. And I was like,
Oh.
I'll come and watch. And you were like, no, that's not
No.
how it works. You have to come. So that was, I mean, you probably didn't even know this, but that was a big ask for me because
Yeah.
as much as I enjoyed improv as a kid and theater games and
Hmm.
things like that, I was like, I'm a grown up now. I'm 30.
Yeah, you're like, this is
I can't.
not.
I'm not going to play your game, but I'm so glad you forced me to do it because I met such interesting people and such like you created this like amazing community, and
Mm.
it's like those were your first, clients in a way, right? But
Yes,
like so you've
yes,
seen this arc of um people's, professional lives and their personal lives. So tell
yeah.
me this story, I
Oh
mean,
my
if you don't
gosh.
mind, about Warren and Justin.
Well, first of all, thank you for not breaking up with me as a friend. So
I will
I
face
will fight. I
alligators.
was just about to say it. I will fight alligators with you, but improv, hell no. Whew, yeah. Well, thank you for trusting in me or forcing you, whichever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me to that class.
Anytime. Anytime. Here to scare you. Um, so no, with Warren and Justin, like and I mean that group is just incredible. Like
Hmm.
what an amazing group of people. But recently I heard from Warren, and so he was one of the like
Hmm.
the OGs like from the beginning, and
He was in our
you know,
club.
he was in our club, and yeah, like he had never done improv before. Justin wouldn't even come in from the parking lot. Like he was really, really nervous, and like like some other people we know. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I had to convince him to come in, and thank goodness he did.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, Warren and Justin quickly became fast friends, and Warren was telling me the other day like that the class and taking improv like changed the trajectory of their life, which is just
I
insane
believe it. Yeah.
to
That's
think
amazing.
about. Like, him and Justin, not only did they become best friends, but they started a business together,
Hmm.
and, met their significant others because of
Hmm.
like knowing one another.
Hmm.
Justin went from like working in a fast food restaurant to like now having a film like and director and film production career, which is what he wanted to do. Um,
And he just got
like
he
he
just won a huge competition. That's so
yes,
amazing.
yeah, in film, and he's going to go to France. It's
Wow.
just so
That's
insane.
crazy.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. And Warren has three businesses he's running. He's married. He has two children now. Like these
Yeah.
people, all, have, led very successful lives. And he said, he's like, my life would have ended up a lot different. He's like, it gave me a lot of confidence. It gave me a set
Hmm.
of friends. I learned all these skills. And he's like, I didn't even know what I was getting myself into when I walked
Mm.
into that room. I had
None of
no
us
idea.
did.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, that's amazing.
so, and that's what I mean. Just like watching people just be their best selves is
Yeah.
just so incredible, and getting to see that over and over again, or getting to see people become close with one another because they're comfortable enough in a safe space to let go and be vulnerable and um, connect in such a deep way.
Hmm.
Is just, it couldn't be more fulfilling to just be a part of watching that happen. I've always loved watching people connect ever since I was little. That
Hmm.
I've always loved, people connecting to one another, like different groups of friends being friends with one another has always been a
Hmm.
big um part of my life, and it still is, even in corporate. I'm like, oh, this
Yeah.
person from
Yeah.
Coca-Cola needs to know this person at Macy's. You know what I mean? It's just, I love, love, love watching people that don't know each other become friends.
You're
And
a connector. You connect
yeah,
people. I mean,
yeah.
that's my, like, just thinking back, I remember like my first real memory of meeting you was me like riding my bike. I was probably like 6, and I'm sure we'd met before, but I was like probably like 6 because I can't imagine I was any younger riding my bike by myself around that block. But anyways, riding my riding and riding, and I noticed that you and like probably Michelle Klein and
Oh my
like
gosh.
you had friends, and you were doing something in the front yard, and I was like riding my bike around and around and around. And of course, like I wasn't gonna say anything. I was just like, this weird little stalker, and I was like going around and around. And but you, like, at some point was like, you invited me to play, and I would have never said it, just like Justin. I would have never come in. I would if you hadn't come out or
Yeah,
said something. and
yeah.
and I feel like that is so like so symbolic of the rest of your life. It's like even though you already had friends to play with and you had your thing, like you're a connector and you're an
Hmm.
inviter. You like invite
Hmm.
people to the party. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that that's my first memory of you.
That is so funny. Oh my gosh. That gives me chills.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
you bring something out in people that allows them to have like be open to a connection.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
but I think we've covered a lot of what I wanted to talk about, which is like directly taking this tool that you have and using
Mm-hmm.
it for managing at least, nerves and anxiety and whatever else you want to
Mm.
call it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think at the heart of it is that you're being playful, right? Like
Yeah.
that you're giving permission to yourself to be playful
Mm-hmm.
and to others. And I
Yeah.
think like grown-ups, adults have a very limited view of play, almost
Yeah.
like, they give themselves permission to play in certain ways, like we can go fishing and we can go drinking and we can go shopping. But it's like that seems like a low bar in terms of like our spirits. Like our spirits want to play a lot more than that. So what's your definition of play?
Mm. Play is freedom and
Mm,
curiosity.
yeah,
So play allows like you to do something without judgment, right?
yeah.
So and that's the freedom piece. And then the other piece is just having curiosity, like what else could this do? How, why, that
Mm-hmm.
the asking a lot of questions. And then I guess the last piece, or the way that I like to play typically is collaboratively. Play doesn't always need to be collaborative, but the type of play that I really am drawn to is playing off one another. So the idea of being curious and having freedom without judgment to do something
Mm,
fun, but with another person or with your environment. So it
yeah.
involves something else, some other
Mm-hmm.
thing or person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I Yeah, I think you're like lucky and I am too. I feel like fortunate that I know how like or that I give myself freedom because I think you're right about that. Like freedom is an important component. Like if I see a tree and I want to climb it, if I'm with the right people who kind of give you that freedom to do that,
Hmm.
and they're not
Yeah.
going to be like, "Well, that's not what ladies do."
Right.
That
Exactly.
it's that peace, that freedom or that like curiosity. Like, well, could we? Like, is this something we could do? Is this,
Right. Could I
like,
get up this tree?
yeah,
Well,
maybe,
I
maybe
guess I
not.
could. Let me try. And I'm certainly
Yeah,
not going to sit at the bottom and go, that's not what ladies do.
right,
That's not me. So I'd be
right.
like, yeah, you want a boost? Here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of like adventure piece of it.
I love it. I love it.
Um, and then, oh, last question for you. So if you had to give kind of some tips or advice for helping reduce, manage, cope with, nerves, anxiety. Like, what are some things that you that you kind of tell yourself right away, like this is,
Mm,
this is what we this is what we need to do? How do you regroup when you're
mm.
feeling anxiety?
I think, sometimes it is like playing playing games, like, or doing one of these like improv exercises. So like when I feel something coming on, is there something that I could do that kind of focuses outside of myself? So could I, do even a playful game that's like with my environment? Like, if even just something really simple, just again to get out of my head. So it's like, could I point to things around the room and name them something different? Or could I, and then just keep pointing to different things? Or if I'm driving and I'm feeling anxious, same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like I see the road. What if I change the first letter of road to toad? And then, so
Mm-hmm.
again, what I'm doing is I'm just being simple but playful. And I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
like out of this dialogue I'm having with myself that's making me panic. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
focusing outside on the environment. And this is if I'm by myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm using the environment to collaborate with. But if I'm with somebody else, same thing. Like, could I play a game like with you where we,
Mm-hmm.
have like a last letter conversation or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And so all it's doing is just, freeing me from my own mind,
Yeah.
of spiraling.
Right.
So those kinds of things really do help.
Mm-hmm.
They sound silly, but they are super helpful.
Yeah. And fun.
And fun, exactly.
I
Fun. And
forgot
all
about
you need to do is last letter is the
last
best.
letter conversation is fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's super fun. I love
Yeah.
it.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being on Lifeyness, bringing improv
I'm
to Lifeyness.
yeah, I'm happy to be wifey with you.
Always.
Yeah. I've been
And
doing my
thanks
whole wifeiness with you
and thanks
forever.
for inviting me to play with you guys when we were 6.
Yeah. No, no problem. Me and
I'm pretty
Michelle were so happy we did.
I'm pretty sure you're playing hot potato. Like that's my memory that you guys were playing hot potato. And
That makes sense. Yeah.
it-
We were yeah. And we were like, this isn't going to work unless we have a third person to play hot potato with. So we better get this girl on the bike over here.
and I was like, me? Are you inviting me?
Me? Aw. Okay. I
Well,
will come
maybe. I've
play.
only been hanging around for like half the day, waiting for you
I've
guys to invite me.
circled around this hot potato game 12 times. If you insist.
Okay, this concludes the little two-part series focusing on managing anxiety by way of performing arts and movement, with Becca Levy talking about dance in episode 4, and Jessie here, of course, using improv, and each of them sharing their personal journeys with struggling with anxiety. I want to reiterate that, of course, we're not health experts here. We're not mental health professionals, but rather speaking to you as friends who have gone through some tough things. So, of course, this is for educational purposes and to help continue raising mental health awareness. The causes for anxiety and highly stressed nervous systems, they're so much more complicated than we could ever touch on in a podcast like this one. But sometimes the strategies for soothing your nerves can be as simple as, a fun dance class or yoga class, taking a walk, or playing a game with a friend. So I just want to summarize here from both episodes. If you're wanting to cope a little bit better with daily anxiety, first of all, as Becca kind of mentioned in her journey, seeking professional help, if it's available to you, is number one best way to go. Secondly, Becca and Jessie both suggested, using some sort of interruption, meaning interrupt that spiral of thoughts. And Becca had some great strategies that she learned in her DBT sessions, her dialectical behavioral therapy sessions. So that's in episode 4. Jessie has some fun games that she uses. So I'm linking her books in the show notes here, where you can find more than 100 games We spoke about last letter conversation specifically, and that's something you could just Google, last letter conversation improv game. That's a fun one to do with a friend. But basically, just getting out of your head, and getting into your body. Again, we get back to joyful embodiment here. Begin playing with the environment around you or with others if that's available to you. Both Jessie and Becca mentioned using a walk as an interruption, which I think is a great idea. Jessie has her slow walk to nowhere exercise, just kind of slowing down, observing the environment around you, which I highly recommend. I'd be in a very bad state myself if I didn't have my daily walks. Just finding ways to stop the spiraling thoughts, interrupt your mind from kind of going and going, using meditation as Becca does, or dance, using improv games, just kind of getting playful and getting grounded in your body and in the environment. I hope these conversations helped and that you found them fun and enjoyable. So until next time, get embodied, get grounded, and have a joyful and playful, beautiful day.